Now, I'm going to show you guys a video of Roland Fryer, who is a black Harvard professor. He's tenured at Harvard, and he's really got his claim to fame in identifying blackness, police brutality, all of these different angles that are given to us as black people for what we should believe, how the world is built for us, how the United States is against us, how police hate us. And he took it upon himself as an economist to look into some of the claims being made. Now, what he found shocked him and shocked the world. And instead of people wanting to see the research and the evidence that he has put together, they told him to stay silent. And why? Because it didn't fit the narrative. And I'm gonna let him tell you himself. Let's watch.
I collected a lot of data. We collected millions of observations on everyday use of force that wasn't lethal. We collected thousands of observations on lethal force. And it was in this moment, in 2016, that I realized people lose their minds when they don't like the result. So what my paper showed, you'll see tomorrow, like some of you, was that, yes, we saw some bias in the low-level uses of force, every day pushing up against cars and things like that. People seem to like that result. But we didn't find any racial bias in police shootings. Now, that was really surprising to me because I expected to see it. The little-known fact is I had 8 full-time RAs that it took to do this over nearly a year. When I found this surprising result, I hired 8 fresh ones and redid it.
Now let's unpack that before we go any further into this video. There's so much to be said about what he's just divulged. One, that there can be certain amounts of research or evidence that people like and enjoy and want to see, and then there is other research and evidence that people dislike and don't want to see. And as much as we know that's true, it's kind of astounding to hear it said out loud that you can like a fact or dislike a fact. Doesn't matter. It's the facts, right? So if you're finding instances of bias and people are cheering that on, as he said he found in lower levels of bias, like stop and frisks and being pushed against cars, things like that, he was finding that police had maybe a racial bias injected in those acts. Why would people be cheering for that? Why would they be happy about that? Why would they like that finding? Because it reinforces what they already believe, that black people are victims. So if you think about that in the broader sense of academia, that means you have a lot of supposed academics who are simply going out into their fields of research looking for things that already support what they believe. They're looking for research that they like rather than research and findings that are true. And to dislike somebody finding out that there in fact is evidence that police do not have bias when it comes to shooting people based on race, mind-blowing. You should be elated to hear that there is evidence to suggest that, especially since police brutality is a keystone in many of the racial arguments that we're having today. It's leading to protests and riots, people fighting each other in the streets, people killing police officers. You should be over the moon to hear that there is research that dispels that myth and says, you know what, maybe it's not true. Yet he was told that they should not publish this research and that they should not let it out to the public. And he took it upon himself, mind you, as a good academic, to say, you know what, I came with these foundings and I had 8 RAs find this. Let's do it again. Let's loop it back over. I'm going to hire 8 new people who may or may not have their own biases to do the exact same research again and see if we come to the same conclusion. Now, I'll let him tell you what he found.
To make sure. They came up with the same exact answer, and I thought it was robust. And I went to go give it, and my God, all hell broke loose. It was a 104-page, dense academic economics paper with a 150-page appendix, okay? It was posted for 4 minutes when I got my first email. This is full of shit. Doesn't make any sense. And I wrote back, how'd you read it that fast? That's amazing. You are a genius. And I had colleagues take me to the side and say, don't publish this. You'll ruin your career.
Pause. Now, this shows an even broader problem. How is it that in the halls of academia, you have people responding to something of this length, saying it's bullshit, before they've even read it? And I've experienced this on a much smaller level than what Roland Fryer went on to experience in his career, having found these findings and putting them out to people. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But I've gone to college campuses to speak to students and do little, seminars or a talk here, a speech there. And before I've even arrived on the campus, you have members of faculty and students calling for the entire event to be shut down before they even have any idea about what I'm going to say. And they're publishing things like, she's a transphobe, she's a racist, she's a white supremacist, before even knowing me. And that seems to be the exact same thing that's happened here. They've made up their minds about the conclusion before they've even gone to do the study. And if that does not terrify you when it comes to the halls of higher education, if that does not undercut the value of going into higher education, I don't know what does. The last thing I would want as a student is an educator who's already made up their mind before looking at information. And the fact that he had a colleague email him and say, this is not true, before he's even read what he's found, insane. And then to go on to tell him that if he publishes it, it's going to ruin his career. If you publish fact, it will ruin your career. Are we seeing the through line in these stories today? Because I'm feeling it.
I said, what are you talking about? I said, what's wrong with it? Do you believe the first part? Yes. Do you believe the second part? Well, the issue is they just don't fit together. We like the first one, but you should publish the second one another time. I said, let me ask this. If the second part about the police shootings, this is a literal conversation. I said to them, if the second part showed bias, do you think I should publish it then? And they say, yeah, then it would make sense. And I said, I guarantee you I'll publish it. We'll see what happens. So it was, I lived under police protection for about 30 or 40 days. I had a 7-day-old daughter at the time. I remember going and shopping for it because, when you have a newborn, you think you have enough diapers, you don't. So I was going to the grocery store to get diapers with an armed guard. It was crazy. It was really, truly crazy.
Do y'all hear that? All for publishing research, you have to go under police protection. So, funnily enough, because a black man did a study and found, not even did a study, he just looked into the numbers, okay? Because a black man looks into the numbers on police brutality and finds out that, maybe there is no racial bias in police brutality when it comes to, lethal use of force or more extreme measures, because he found that out and published it, he's now forced to be under the protection of police officers. So these leftists who believe, police are out to kill black men, that's what they're there for, and you found something that dispels that claim, I'm going to put you under police protection as a black man. And that is, part of what Roland Fryer went through as an educator. You've heard me talk about him many times on this show, but because of the research that he did, that ended up dispelling a lot of the stuff that we currently think. He found out about police brutality. He did a whole paper on acting white and found out that as black kids were more successful in school and getting better grades, they lost friends among the black community and were viewed as acting white and were no longer popular amongst the black community. So because he published findings like this, he had a target on his back almost the entirety of his time at Harvard. And one of the people responsible for really driving the knife into Roland Fryer in his time at Harvard was none other than Claudine Gay, who we all know now as the former president of Harvard, who had to resign due to plagiarism. Claudine Gay did not like Roland Fryer whatsoever, and that's because she was the queen of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and he was the one who was challenging DEI every time he got the opportunity to, through nothing more than facts. Not even from his own opinion or his strong convictions on the matter, through facts that he was finding. And because she didn't really like what he had to say, she wanted to revoke his tenure, which didn't end up happening, luckily, as he is still a very powerful force in academia at this moment, but all because he decided decided to challenge a narrative. He also went through a slew of sexual assault allegations from a colleague, and Harvard ended up investigating that and throwing tens of those allegations out on him. So the man has had a target on his back ever since he started finding things like this, and all because we've decided what it means to be Black in America. We've decided what that experience is, and it doesn't matter if the facts reinforce it or not. It matters that we've just decided that that's the fact. There are so many people that if you go out on the street and ask them, how many Black people do you think are killed by a police officer on an annual basis? How many unarmed Black people do you think are killed by police officers on an annual basis? They'll say hundreds, if not thousands. The real answer is like a handful, 12, 19, 1 year, I believe. So we have a very distorted view of what reality is. And if you take the time to challenge that reality, you will be chastised, you will be attacked, you will become the next Roland Fryer. And luckily, he's, popping back up. People are constantly finding his work. They're constantly able to talk about it. And he's consistently challenging DEI because what he cares about is actual outcomes. That's what he's concerned with. I'm going to show you this other video of him discussing DEI at this very same event and being asked about it. And his answer, straightforward, profound, concise.
I also don't tolerate foolishness at all, okay? And so you can't put me on a task force where we're going to spend the semester talking about the new name for Black people. I don't want to do it. Right? You go to my neighborhood and call someone BIPOC, they'll punch you in the face. No one cares. I care about the real issues. Right? You know what's offensive? Being unemployed. And so I have had that attitude throughout my career. I don't plan on getting rid of it because I want to make sure we focus on the real issues. And I believe sometimes in universities we start to focus internally on the things that will, but it's not helping the people that we said we came there to help.
I think that is really what we constantly need to be focusing on, because there's a million things in this world that are going to make you feel a certain way, or that might strike you as racist or biased or this and that. And there's a million different stories that we can tell ourselves about how we help Black people or the marginalized or the underprivileged. But really what it is about outcomes. And they're going to fluff you and, make you feel good about all these different changes that they're making, which we've talked about on this show. Joe Biden recently went and sat with 2 Black kids and their father and ate fried chicken and talked about how they're doing in school. And that's meant to be something done for Black America. A group of Democrats put together a hip hop task force. Hip-hop task force. And the purpose of this hip-hop task force is to bring about equity through hip-hop music. How exactly that's done? I don't know. We've changed the word for Black people to BIPOC, to be inclusive and to make people feel better. And apparently that's helping underprivileged communities. And you'll notice that while these things might make you feel good and make you feel like you're an ally and you're doing something great, the outcomes are not translating. The Black community is not doing any better. It's not looking any better. It's not feeling any better. But all the allies who are saying BIPOC and eating fried chicken and, paying their tax dollars to the hip hop task force certainly feel better, I guess, about what they're doing. Guys, I can't make this stuff up.